I am gaveling the meeting into order. Good evening. Thank you for attending this evening's board meeting. CMHA is holding its board meeting virtually via webcam and teleconferencing on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020, as approved through Ohio's novel coronavirus response bill, which directly affects how local governments throughout the state operate in conducting public business. These sweeping changes were approved Thursday, March 27th, 2020. This provision sunsets when the governor withdraws the state of emergency or December 1st, 2020, whichever is sooner. I'm getting feedback on my voice. Is anybody else getting that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to wait? It seems fixed. Okay. This is the contemporaneous meeting for instrumentalities that do not have any new business or matters requiring deliberation. And let's see. The meetings of the following instrumentalities: Laurel Homes 1, Lincoln View Incorporated, Reserve on South Martin, Southwest Ohio Housing Development Incorporated, Cary Crossing Development Corporation, West Union Square Development Corporation, Sutter View Development Corporation, Pinecrest Rad Development Corporation, Park Eden Evanston LLC, Park Eden Apartments Development Corporation, Mariana Terrace Development Corporation, and Bennett Point Development Corporation are hereby called to order. Roll call for attendance. Ms. Mitchell.
Hey, y'all.
Thank you. Mr. Weedman. Mr. Harris.
Present.
And the chair is present. We have a quorum for the meeting. Commissioners, have you reviewed the June 30, 2020 minutes for these instrumentalities? And if so, are there any corrections?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. A second. Thank you. A roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Yay.
Thank you. Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion passes. There's no new business for these instrumentalities.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. And a second. Thank you. A roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The meeting is adjourned. Now, we move on to the regular meeting of Touchstone Property Services Incorporated for Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. The meeting is called to order. Roll call. Ms. Mitchell.
Present.
Mr. Weedman.
Present.
Mr. Harris.
Present.
The chair is present. We have a quorum. Item 3 is approval of minutes. Is there a
Motion to approve.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any corrections to these minutes? Hearing none, a roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The motion passes. Item 4 is discussion of recommendations, resolution number 101, to approve bad debt write-off for second quarter 2020 Touchstone Property Services.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All right. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, can we get an update on the number, where we're currently at with that?
Yeah,
So,
please, Rima.
I'm so sorry. The current monthly write-off is only $376, $246 for Baldwin Grove and $130 for West Union Square. So, very small number for this month.
That is small.
Is that due to interim recertifications?
So typically for the Touchstone properties, the amount of write-offs is very, very small. This is pretty typical. You'll have multiple months where you won't even see anything for Touchstone properties.
Ah, that's right. This is Touchstone. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, that makes sense.
That'd be a pretty good number for.
I was like,
Yes, it would be.
wait, hold up. What? Like, no one else is skipping on this?
Wishful,
Hang on, Reggie.
wishful thinking.
We're going to get to that. Hang on. So, good question. Any others? All right. So, let's see. Do we have a motion and a second?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Roll call, Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, resolution 101 to approve second quarter 2020 financial statements for Touchstone Property Services.
You mean 102?
What did I say? Something other than 102?
You did.
101.
I'm sorry. Geez, what does that say about me? I'm looking right at it. Not resolution number 102. That's kind of dyslexic. That's scary.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. A roll call, Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, resolution 103, authorizing the CEO of Touchstone Property Services Incorporated to sign time extensions and change orders to contracts not to exceed 20% of the initial contract price.
Motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions?
So when you say time extensions, what are we speaking of?
So if we have a contract that, it happens a lot in construction contracts where we may have to do extension because construction slowed down or something like that. Or if you actually have one that we brought before the board in our regular meeting where we signed we awarded something and then we haven't gotten a chance to kind of negotiate it. So we need to extend the time to do the negotiation and sign the other paperwork.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call. Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, resolution 104, authorizing the CEO of Touchstone Property Services Incorporated to enter into cooperative purchasing agreements.
Motion.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman,
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Resolution 105, amending the bylaws of Touchstone Property Services Incorporated.
Motion.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions?
Joy, you might want to expand on this, Joy, if you would.
Certainly, Mr. Weedman. What we are asking and recommending for the board is to amend or add to its bylaws two provisions. One is section 5.08, has to do with the treasurer, and it delineates what the treasurer's responsibilities and indicates that the treasurer of Touchstone shall perform other duties from time to time as may be assigned by the president. An additional modification is recommended, and that is at 7.01, contracts and other writings. And it allows for the CEO of Touchstone to be the contracting officer and to sign off on these agreements.
Okay. Thank you.
Quick question. So without going into lots of detail, is there a brief explanation as to the circumstances that arose that made us realize
Sure.
that we needed to
Sure. In our discussions with our procurement officers, what is happening is throughout the RAD conversion, that Touchstone often becomes the managing agent for these properties and therefore needs expanded oversight that probably wasn't initially incorporated into the bylaws. And therefore, at this time, having that history, we wanted to expand the roles of the treasurer and provide that the CEO would
Make
have
things more
the
efficient.
authorization to sign on behalf of Touchstone.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. If there's
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Second. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. The meeting is closed. Now, we move on to the regular board meeting of the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority for Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. The meeting is now called to order. Roll call for attendance. Ms. Mitchell.
Present.
Mr. Weedman.
Present.
Mr. Harris.
Present.
And the chair is present. We have a quorum. And before we proceed, I'm going to take advantage of this moment, and I invite any other board members to share any thing that they would like to share, but just to recognize all the associates, employees of CMHA, and the very commendable job they've done as the agency has been largely reinvented in terms of the work they do and how they do it. And in addition to all the RAD projects, now with Bennett Point, the progress that was made there last week, I'm hard-pressed to think of a moment, and quite literally in the history of CMHA, where the mission has been so well served as by this current group of employees and their leadership. So it seems appropriate to say, well done, keep it up, you're amazing. You're amazing at how much more you can do, I think, as you continue to find ways to put CMHA on a more sustainable footing and pursue the mission in every other way. So it just seems right to take a moment and amplify to recognize each of you in your efforts. It does not go unnoticed. So thank you for letting me say that. And if there are any other board members who'd like to make a comment, please feel free to.
Yeah, Bill, I would echo those thoughts. I think we have a lot of challenges, especially with COVID and the way we conduct business differently. We're all working from home, and it makes things a lot more difficult. The challenges are a lot greater, and you've all stepped up to the plate and done an awesome job. And Greg, with your leadership, we appreciate your leadership. You've done a great job keeping us on track in these trying times. So we want to thank you for that.
Absolutely, I agree.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate that, but it's truly a team effort. So it's I think you're going to see out of this next presentation a lot of hard work went into really devising a new plan for us. So I really appreciate that, but it's due to the group that I have a pleasure of working with. It really is.
And that's evident. That's evident. You know, as long as there is mutual respect, you're always gonna have leadership on both ends. And I do brag about CMHA when someone says something even halfway negative. It's good to say, well, does your organization have national attention? And I leave it, and that's where I leave it.
There you go. And Joe is working it from San Francisco tonight. We can all see in his background of his, his shot. Okay, so thank you, each of you. We know you.
Can I just take 2 seconds? I know we have a lot to go, but we have 2 people that I don't think the board is used to seeing. Stephanie Stacks is a new manager in our Housing Choice Voucher Program. Wave your hand there, Stephanie, down there. Stephanie's been with the organization a while, but she is taking on the new role. We had someone that took a different role in a different agency, actually took an executive director role in another agency from our HCV program. And Stephanie has stepped up and stepped in and is really doing a really good job for Lisa. And then Tyler, can you wave your hand there, Tyler, down there? Tyler actually was a previous executive director at a smaller agency, and now he's our assistant director in our Housing Choice Voucher Program, and just doing a pretty good job for Lisa in the Housing Choice Voucher Program as well. So there's a couple additional faces that you will be seeing in the future and giving presentations as well. So I just wanted to make sure they were noted.
Yeah, welcome. You joined a fabulous team. Okay, shall we get on with our item 3 is approval of minutes. Is there
Motion to approve.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Any corrections?
Nope.
Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion passes. Now, item 4 on our agenda is presentations. And we have a presentation this month on CMHA Pandemic Work Responsibility Update by the CMHA leadership team. And we'll let you take it from here.
All right. Well, thank you. Good evening, commissioners. Our presentation
Evening.
will be in regards to the pandemic preparation and prevention and short-term and long-term operational changes to maximize the agency's efficiency and effectiveness so that we can continue to provide gold standard service. Next slide. I will be presenting a general overview of the pandemic planning and implementation process and the CARES Act funding. My colleagues will be presenting the planning and implementation of the CMHA safety plan and protocols. They will discuss the IT efforts in planning, purchasing, and implementation of hardware, software, and services to establish telecommuting platform. HR will be presenting workforce planning and implementation of on-site and off-site work schedules to keep employees safe, and operations of the agency moving forward, and to minimize the risk of exposure and illness. The programs will demonstrate how they've changed the way they conduct business, both in asset management and Housing Choice Voucher Program that maximizes the efficiency and the safety for the employees, the landlords, and the residents. We will conclude this presentation with how CMHA is creatively moving forward in this new environment by taking advantage of how this pandemic is forcing us to change the way we think and conduct our business, but still maintaining our gold standards. The pandemic was the catalyst that pushed us forward in using technology available so that we can gain efficiencies and potentially reduce costs in the long term. Next slide, please. Next slide. CMHA fortunately recognized earlier than some other firms that the virus could potentially make a tremendous impact to our agency. With us dealing with large numbers of people on a daily basis as we do, we were concerned that the virus could cause serious issues with exposure and illness. We have since learned that without the measures we quickly implemented, individual employees that were exposed and infected by the virus could have caused us to close down departments or buildings, impacting our ability to provide essential services. We were very grateful that we had started early because when the stay-at-home orders were issued in mid-March, we had PPEs on hand and preliminary workforce planning as well as basic mobile work plan established. Did everything move smoothly? No, but we were committed to tweaking and making changes to our plan so that we could seamlessly continue to provide customer service. We started changing our business practices, such as conducting virtual HQS inspections, preparing for virtual REAC inspections, virtual leasing, and signing critical documents electronically so that we could conduct our daily work. What we found through this process was a gain in efficiencies by utilizing technologies such as online and virtual platforms and video conferencing. We gained time lost on physically driving and walking our work from place to place. We were able to track our documents and expedite our processes because we knew exactly where the work was and where the bottlenecks were. We were able to turn around information to our customers faster because of virtual processes. While we did and do have growing pains in implementing change, the overall assessment to date is that we're providing and meeting the needs of our community and the people that we serve while we keep everyone safe, including staff, residents, landlords, vendors. Next slide, please. We also procured safety consultants in mid-May to assist us with creating CMHA's safety plan and protocol to return us to the work site where it was necessary and where we could return safely, as well as creating protocols on how we could return safely. Throughout this presentation, you will see pictures of physical changes to the site, as well as signage and process changes. Next slide, please. This slide reflects the high level of planning and implementation timeline, which ranges from early February to August. We began meeting and planning in early February. Our initial discussions were centered around what we needed to do to provide our staff to be able to conduct business safely, such as masks, gloves, bodysuits, hand sanitizers, and cleaning materials. We also started assessing our IT equipment and resources in case we were required by the state to close. We quickly ascertained that we did not have enough equipment such as laptops, cell phones, server access, video conferencing capability, and very limited teleconferencing needed for telecommuting. CMHA devised a preliminary plans and started purchasing PPEs and IT equipment late February into March. We've purchased and implemented the majority of the IT equipment and services from February through August. We made physical changes to our work site from March through June, and updated and made changes to our workforce planning from July to August. Next slide, please. This picture shows a plexiglass sneeze guard in one of our management offices that was built and placed there by our carpenters, as well as example of signage that's placed everywhere on the work sites. Next slide, please. This picture reflects an example of floor signage placed in our residential elevators and hand sanitizers that are mounted on the walls. Next slide, please. The next few slides discuss the CARES Act funding enacted in April of 2020, but it goes back retroactively to March 27, 2020. Much of the planning and the implementation costs and the purchases of the resources was covered and is covered currently by this funding source. We received $3.9 million in asset management operating subsidy and $3.1 in HCV administrative fees, totaling about $7 million. The two main caveats to this funding was one, that the spending had to be done on things that were associated with the virus prevention and preparedness. And the second, that it had to be expended by December of 2020. Next slide, please. As you can see, we started expending the money on PPEs, labor and materials, and creating physical changes on the work site, and quite a large of it on technology such as cell phones, laptops, software, and services such as Zoom for video conferencing to establish a mobile workforce platform. Next slide, please. We have expended or obligated over $3.1 million as of the end of July, and we continue planning the use and the expenditures of the remaining amount. Next slide, please. Next, Will McCabe, who is our Manager of Facilities and Fleet, will discuss CMHA's safety measures and protocols. Will?
Thank you, Raymond, and good evening, Commissioners. I will be reviewing the CMHA protocol and safety plan. Next slide, please. In an effort to maintain the CMHA gold standard performance, we partnered with Mac Parent Consulting Services to develop protocols and SOPs for a safe work environment. Together, we completed walkthroughs of all CMHA sites and administration buildings to identify items such as the max number of persons in areas such as elevators, restrooms, laundry rooms, offices, and other common spaces to ensure social distancing. We also identified areas to mark with safety reminders such as the use of hand sanitizers, hand washing, and sanitizing of shared equipment such as printers, computers, and other office equipment. We identified traffic patterns and locations for hand sanitizing stations and social distancing markers as well. We also reviewed our HVAC systems and reviewed our vehicle policy as well. Following these visits, Mac Parent developed site-specific SOPs and also developed a training video that each employee is required to review. Next slide, please. I'd like to draw your attention to the medical screening area here on campus. This is one of two that we have. As you can see, it's roped off and marked for 6 feet distance between people as they come in to visit our campus. Next slide, please. We were also able to obtain custom built or standard sneeze guards. As you can see in this picture, this is the ones that will be used on the board. Next slide, please. And we also were able to utilize the talent of CMHA carpenters as well, who built this custom sneeze guard at one of our management sites. Next slide, please. We recently had our parking lot resealed and striped, and we also added drop boxes. And while we were doing the restriping, we added the drop box markers, and we had one-way traffic flow. So this allows any residents needing paperwork or to drop something off, they can pull up to these boxes versus coming in and getting out of their car and coming inside the buildings. So it's
we had drop boxes before this endeavor.
We had a smaller drop box for a few months inside our vestibules, but nothing like this.
No, the answer, as Will said, we devised a smaller one after the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, we really didn't have one. So we developed a smaller one, but then we, as our part of our full plan, we developed these. So this limits contact with anyone even more.
Are there any boxes like this at the property management offices, or are those not necessary?
We have placed, I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead, Marquita.
I was going to say we have placed drop boxes at the properties as well. When we had our carpenters create boxes so that individuals, if they have documents or any other communication they want to leave for the manager, they can put it in there.
But no tenant would ever put their rent payment in one of these boxes.
Exactly. No. And there's a note above the box that states that as well, that that's not for payment.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. During the research and review of our HVAC systems, we found that viruses can be spread through our air distribution systems. So to combat this, CMHA will take the following steps. Our HVAC units will have I-wave systems installed. These I-wave systems produce ions that capture viruses and other particulates, which will allow them to then be captured by the filters before releasing into the air flow. Our ductwork will also be cleaned and sanitized on a routine basis, and our HVAC systems will have the highest MER value filters installed. And our HVAC systems are serviced as recommended by the manufacturer. Next slide, please.
Is that technology that changes the charge of the ion?
It produces the ion. I'm not sure about the charge of it. I know that the way it releases, it attracts the particulates and it makes them larger when it connects to the ion. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a larger particle, and the filters are able to catch them because they're larger.
What's the exchange time for the air in the room? Is there an easy answer to a question like that?
I do not know. I do not have that. I can get that information for you. I do not know the exchange time.
Okay, but this was a recommendation by our consultant?
Correct. We researched it together, and we contacted some other companies that were using it, and they're actually becoming very hard to get right now because a lot of companies are using this technology.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We also reviewed our vehicle protocols. CMHA staff working remotely are permitted to take CMHA vehicles home with them. And this is going to continue after the September 1st return to work date. CMHA vehicles can only be used for work purposes, and currently 45 vehicles are going home with CMHA employees, 34 in property management, 7 in the housing choice voucher program, and 4 in the real estate construction. Before operating the vehicle, the CMHA staff members shall clean and disinfect all areas that are touched throughout the vehicle, and we provided the SOP on how to do that, and we also supplied given the supplies to do so. And our vehicles were professionally disinfected through the month of July by a third-party vendor.
Okay. And our employees are aware of any
with computer audio.
Any zoning covenants with regard to how to store a work vehicle as opposed to a personal vehicle?
They sign that they will treat the vehicle. I mean, so there's no special zoning or anything. The work vehicle should be treated and parked in legal spaces on their personal property as if they're at work as well.
Next slide, please. Personal protective equipment. CMHA staff shall wear a nose and mouth covering when in any community space at CMHA. The staff will wear the PPE while meeting with any contractors, clients, or other staff members or visitors. We do not require them to wear them while they're alone in their personal office. We did provide them both cloth and paper masks to the staff, and we also provided an SOP on how to don the mask safely and how to remove the mask safely. Next slide, please. I'd like to now introduce Mark Pefferman, our Director of IT, who's going to be going over the mobile work planning and implementation.
Thanks, Will. Good evening, Commissioners. Mark Pefferman, Information Technology Director. Information technology is a critical business enabler, and we partnered closely with our business counterparts to create a mobile work capability to ensure that the business departments could continue to provide gold standard service to our clients. Now, while the COVID-19 pandemic was the catalyst for this effort, as Rima mentioned earlier, we realized very quickly that we could and should create a more future-looking mobile worker capability for the agency. We wanted to design a platform that could handle not only the pandemic event, but also future potential business disrupting events that could prevent our associates from being able to work on site, such as bad weather, bad travel days, civil unrest, etc. So the way we proceeded was along a 4-phase approach. Phase 1 was provide immediate remote connectivity and remote communications capabilities. To that end, we purchased cell phones, we purchased laptops, we acquired a software package called UC1, which extended our call center capabilities to cell phones. We purchased and installed 25 Zoom licenses, and we increased the capabilities for conference calling, video streaming services, and video recording services. At the bottom of the slide, these are 3 things that I thought was very interesting about our Zoom usage. The first is a number of Zoom meetings starting in March on the left and ending month to date in August. You can see it's been a steady progression of more increased Zoom meetings. The one in the center is Zoom participants, so that's the number of folks participating in Zoom meetings. And then the last sub-slide is the number of actual minutes that have been scheduled and consumed using the Zoom platform. So very good progression. Zoom is being used quite effectively here in the organization.
What do you glean from the data Zoom meeting minutes and the change in that trend in that line? What can we conclude from that, if anything?
Things. One, our associates are using it more and more and more. Second, we have used it several times with external parties for things like external training. For example, Yardi, we scheduled 30 to 40 people to do Yardi training with a couple Yardi consultants who were remote and spent 4 or 5 hour blocks doing some training. I believe our RECD folks are using it with other external vendors and some of the as part of the construction projects. So it's being embraced and utilized again quite effectively, since we have to limit our person-to-person contact or on face-to-face contacts.
Are you ready to make any comparisons to how many minutes were devoted to in-person meetings before we were forced to go to this format?
No, I'm not prepared to do that. Okay. That would be, and quite frankly, that would be more anecdotal. I could go back and look at previous meetings scheduled through Outlook, but we wouldn't have a very accurate assessment, given that some of those meetings would run over, some of those meetings may not have happened. Okay. The nice thing about Zoom is it's from the time you log in till the time the meeting ends. So that's good, hard data.
Yes, it is. Okay, thank you.
Phase 2 was design and implement a more robust remote worker capability. And to that end, we ordered a large number of laptops, cases, monitors to give that remote worker the ability to work as effectively at a remote site as they are at their desk. And as of 8/24, we've issued 124 of those laptops, monitors. And the intent of these laptops is not additional equipment. It is to replace the employee's desktop. We want to move to a remote worker thought process and a remote worker environment. And I'll talk a little bit more about the desktops, what we're going to do with those in a second. We also closely monitor and adjusted those individual cell phone voice and data plans to better align their usage in order to minimize the costs. So what do I mean by that? As we noticed that certain roles in the company naturally use more voice and data minutes, or more voice minutes and more data gigabytes. And what we were able to do is, as we found where those roles shouldn't have had the basic plan, they should have had a stepped up plan, we could step them up to that plan, again, minimize the cost of those overages, to best minimize the cost across the board.
Are our maintenance people now carrying these cell phones and processing work orders, doing
yes,
they do? Yes.
So the maintenance folks are a good example. They get their work orders via the Yardi Voyager system onto their mobile device, which is in their case is a cell phone. They then do the work, close that work order on their remote on their cell device, and it goes and updates Yardi Voyager. So,
okay. So it's that tie-in to the Yardi system that's a greater capability than the devices we used before.
Yes,
upgrading the Yardi. So that process is more efficient because so many more fields are being populated simultaneously as they enter responses in a field.
So what we've noticed is several things. One, the Yardi platform is much more reliable and stable than our previous platform. The cell phones were very old, a very old technology, not very reliable.
Right.
We're on the latest and greatest cell phones, either Apple's or Android devices versus what we had before. So it's several things. One, the platform is a better platform, and the technology that we're employing is a much better technology.
So that's contributing to the performance efficiencies.
Yes.
Good. And I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Phase 3 is replace the employees' desktops with docking stations. I mentioned that we issued laptops, and the intent of that was to replace their desktop. So now we're going to harvest those desktops. We're going to replace them with docking stations. And what docking stations do is provide 2 monitors, keyboard, mouse for the employee to plug in a single cord into the laptop and be working just as though they had a desktop. So they would carry their laptop home, plug it into the monitor they have there, or when they come in the office, they plug it right into the desktop. Those desktops we are going to harvest. We are going to use the first 50 to upgrade the computers in our training center. The remaining devices that we free up in this respect, we have not decided what we're going to do with those yet. We have several options. The Connect Home Initiative is one. There are many other places where people would accept donations of those or even the sale of those devices. Have not decided yet what to do with those.
Mark, I'm confused, and it's probably I wasn't listening closely enough. Are we going to provide the employees with 2 monitors, a keyboard, and a mouse at home as well?
Right now, it's a single monitor with a sound bar, and they plug in. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
And so, if I may, Mark, Mr. Miles, the answer to that is no, not every employee. It depends on what the employee's work responsibility is, such as people that enter work orders that are working from home, they need 2 monitors to look up work orders while residents are on the phone.
Right.
And they close out work orders that are completed by contractors.
Okay.
So, yes, they do have 2 monitors. Someone like myself or like Rima, we don't need 2 monitors at home, so we won't have 2 monitors. So it really depends on what what type of work the staff person is doing, whether they will get 2 monitors. Because most of them actually had 2 monitors at their desk, so it just allows them to keep the continuity of completing their tasks with the same type of equipment.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. And then phase 4 is improve our call center capabilities. The UC1 application I talked about previously provides remote call center features, and we're working to enhance those features so that we can do a little more fully do remote call center functions. We're working closely with Cincinnati Bell to design and implement that more robust remote call center functionality. Phase 1 and 2 were sequential.
Can you give us an example of what would make it more robust?
Sure. So there are a notion of splits in a call center. So you would log into a particular split, you and several people, and calls would route kind of in a round robin fashion to whoever was in that particular split. That's a pretty simple call center function. Those kinds of functions can be remoted pretty easily. When you get into the fancier call center features where you want to do skill-based routing, for example, where you can then train people up. If you went to, say, a consolidated call center where people had certain skills, as they got more skills, they could service more calls coming in. So they would have different skills. Our current call center platform does not allow for that. And it makes a much more efficient call center. You're probably familiar with TPAs, the third-party administrators.
Right.
Some of those call centers, they are very sophisticated in that they can look at the 800 number coming in, route it to a particular person who knows how to service that particular financial services organization. You can do a similar thing with the skills that we have, whether it be HCV, work order, or asset management type questions.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Yes.
Especially for the caller, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The caller doesn't have to memorize 15 numbers.
Right.
So, again, that's a future thing that we're looking at, but we want to build a platform that allows that if we decide to move in that direction in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. As I said, phase 1 and 2 were sequential in nature just by the nature of what was going on there. Phase 3 and 4 are being implemented more in parallel. So not only did we focus on building a remote worker capability, we also focused on ways to make CMHA easier to do business with for our clients, which is our residents and applicants, as well as our vendors and landlords. Capabilities we've implemented to date include Rent Cafe, which is a web portal that's targeted at landlords. Provides them the ability to review their HAP payments, review their inspection results. They can see who their caseworker is. lots of information on the Rent Cafe. That is live currently. There's about 1,200 landlords that have registered on it so far, and the feedback on it has been very good.
So, Mark, at 2:00 in the morning, they can go online and see where an application is, what progress has been made on it. Help us understand what.
For the landlords, they can see things like their rent payments, the half payments they've received, who those were distributed across, what unit information we show for their particular units, who's occupying that unit, inspection results. So they had an inspection earlier that week. They haven't received their letter yet. As soon as that inspection gets posted in Voyager by the inspector, it shows up on the Rent Cafe. So it pushes a lot of information out to them.
Has that ever been available prior to this system?
I believe their half payments have been. Their inspection results have not. Their caseworker information, I don't believe, has been provided to them. So there's a lot of enhancements in this Rent Cafe that pushes that information out to the landlord.
But this relieves a lot of time requirement for someone trying to do business with us, and it relieves a lot of time requirement of our staff on phone calls as an alternative to these views.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
And in the lower right of the slide there, that's an actual screenshot of the Rent Cafe screen that the landlord has, and each icon represents a capability or a certain piece of information that they can look at.
That's incredible. What else would they ask about other than modules?
I'm hoping
should I have more money?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that Rent Cafe chassis also provides the information for residents and applicants. We have not implemented that yet, but it's the same basic chassis, and the icons are very similar. The type of information that applicants and residents would have the ability to look at. The second portal that we do have implemented is called Vendor Cafe. That's for our AP vendors. And this one is very powerful. We can push and have been pushing work orders, purchase orders to the vendors, the AP vendors that register on Vendor Cafe, all electronically. You fill out the work order, you pick the vendor, and if they're a Vendor Cafe vendor, it goes straight to them via this Vendor Cafe. They can assign it to their folks, work it, and as soon as they mark it complete, it goes back to Yardi, back to the Voyager system, and marks that work order complete.
Acronyms, Mark. AP, that's not accounts payable.
Yes.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes. Sorry. So our accounts payable vendors, as opposed to our landlords, this would be the Geilers and the Blows and, plumbers, electricians, et cetera.
Okay.
That we would use.
Just one more question on the previous module, and I'm not sure if you were saying it's not quite online, but if I'm a tenant and I want to know what my rent is coming up, I can go on this site and find out.
Once we get, we have not turned on the for the Rent Cafe for the residents and applicants yet. We are, as Mark said, we have this up, and we have about 3,300 landlords, and so we only have about 1,200 of them that are signed up. So we want to get more of our landlords signed up and get, as we continue to work through our housing choice voucher side, and then we will start to turn on the other side for all of our properties that we own, operate, and manage.
Do you think this time next year that will be live?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Okay. That's got to cut down on a lot of phone calls and other modes of communication, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely.
So that sounds like significant progress. Thank you.
So the back to the vendor cafe, I talked about work orders. We also send the vendors purchase orders. They will land in vendor cafe once they've been through the whole approval process. The vendor does the work. They can then submit an invoice if they have a purchase order, and B, that purchase order has been received. So there's a great checks and balances in that they can't send us an invoice electronically unless it's been approved and received. Then that invoice flows back into the accounts payable side electronically. So we have a very tight system, much more efficient than the paper system that we have, that we've all depended on for years, goes into the AP side for payment. So, and it gives everyone along the line transparency and visibility into where everything is along the line.
So redundancies for this. Let's say, I don't know, the system goes down. Several years ago, we talked about having a remote location for servers and just a place to have a redundant storage site. Is that an obsolete notion? Is it all in the cloud now?
In the case of Yardi, everything is cloud-based. So it's out, all of our data is out there in the cloud. And Yardi has a couple different sites around the United States that gives us resiliency in the event of a disaster at one place. You can get to Yardi from anywhere you have an internet connection, you can get to Yardi.
Good.
So that helps with the resiliency and the business continuity and disaster recovery.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So those features are right now in operation. Some things that are on the near horizon, we talked already about the rent cafe for residents and applicants to push that ability to see a lot of their data down to the resident and the applicant. Virtual inspections. We are pioneering that ability to do virtual inspections for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, where you have the landlord involved in helping do a virtual inspection. Very efficient, reduces travel time almost to zero, as the inspector can bounce from landlord to landlord and do those virtual inspections. That's went extremely well. And Marquita is going to mention later about CMHA being a test site for REAC inspections for the asset management properties in a very similar fashion.
Mark, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
The virtual inspections, are we seeing everything with those?
Well, I'll let Lisa answer later or can chime in, but there's only certain inspections it probably works well for. Okay. So, for example,
Mark, if you let me, I'll give you what we're pioneering with, as Mark said, is with the new inspection. So we're testing it out with no one in the unit. And so the inspector actually guides the person around the unit and outside the unit on what they would like to see. And our inspectors have a sheet that they follow of every aspect of the property that they have to see as the inspections are going on. With
my question would be, let's say you have you've got your inspection checklist and you're checking them all off as you go, and there are things in there that are not on the checklist, but you might not see if you weren't there physically. I guess that's the question I'm asking.
Yeah, so let's say that happens and we don't see them and we approve the inspection. Let's say there's two things that happens then the tenant will move in, and then the tenant can alert us. And then the other part of that is we actually do a certain percentage of quality control inspections. Okay. So, even though we approve the unit through the virtual process, that's one of the things that HUD, as they've been talking through this, is that they're saying what is going to be the magic percentage or the magic number to do the quality control to ensure that, as you're saying, something wasn't missed, and then, if the tenant doesn't speak up because they like the neighborhood or, they need to place, and so they kind of don't say anything about it. So that's at this point the only way to ensure is guiding through the process and then picking a percentage to do quality control inspections.
Okay, thanks.
That's a great question, Tom. At this point, I gather there are just a handful of other agencies around the country that are part of this pilot. Are you or the other agencies giving feedback to HUD of what you're finding, and how people might figure out a way to game this remote inspection?
Well, I think we're all. So if you remember, Kevin Laviano used to be our Cleveland director. And actually, Kevin Laviano is over the REAC. It's called REAC. And that's over all the inspections for public housing and HCV. So Kevin is still located in Cleveland. And so he's working with Akron and he's working with CMHA. And yes, those questions have come up. And he's on a deadline is to present actually to HUD on doing virtual inspections, even for REAC inspections. So actually September the 2nd and the 3rd of next month, they're sending a REAC test group down, and they're going to do 3 tests. And it goes back to your question. They're going to do a test with a resident. They're going to do a test with a maintenance person, and then they're going to do a test with a actual REAC person on the virtual side. So and the reason that they're choosing the 3 is they want to see if they get consistency in what they see. They want to see how long it actually takes for each different grouping to do it, because he needs to be able to say, if the residents do it, we see more, but it takes longer. If the maintenance staff does it, we see more, or it doesn't, or it takes longer. Or if the REAC person does it, we're still doing our same costs and at our same risk, but we see more. So really, that's what they're trying to figure out. They did a test last month in Akron. They found out that it actually went faster when the resident did it than the maintenance guy or the REAC person. So they want to test to see, we have older housing stock, and they want to see the different styles of upstairs, a flat resident, and just see what the time is to take it there. The other things that they have to take into consideration, if they do residents, what about elderly residents that don't have the ability to walk around and things like that? So these are all of the, things and measures that they're tossing up and trying to figure out what makes the best sense. But they are in agreement that doing the virtual inspection and then coupling it with the quality control is going to be a more effective and efficient way to get more inspections done at all PHAs, because right now they're behind probably about a good year on their inspections.
I just want to chime in really quickly. I mean, Greg knows that this is, part of the work that I do. And I just want to say that I am fully on board and champion 100% all of this technology and virtual work. And I'm looking forward to see how this work is incorporated beyond COVID, because I think that it's highly efficient. I think that virtual inspections, I think that the using of the vendor cafe, of Rent Cafe, of maximizing the capacities of Yardi. Yardi has lots of additional programs. Yardi even has a resident services component. And so I am fully on board with embracing all of the technology that's out there in terms of this management piece. Because we do see, annual inspections. I mean, they are a beast, and the paperwork. And so I just want to say to staff, like I appreciate it, I see it, and I think that the way that you have approached this virtual work and this working from home, and even the thoughtfulness behind who gets a double monitor from a single monitor, is just really well thought out, and that's the work. And I hope, and it seems like in the way that you're presenting it, that you're thinking about this for the future, right? So that we can see and think about what it looks like non-corona, because I just find that there are lots of efficiencies you probably uncovered.
Yes, definitely.
And that's a great segue into the last two comments, Mr. Harris. Electronic signatures is also something that we have implemented internally. We sign a lot of agreements that way. What we have found is the documents get completed more efficiently, faster, and safer. That's something that we want to leverage for the next iteration, which is going into virtual leasing. How can we get the documents to the tenants, to the prospective tenants, to the residents, et cetera, get them signed and returned without the face-to-face contact. So we'll be leveraging an electronic signature capability to do that. So I'd like to introduce Lisa Thomas, Director of Human Resources, who will present the workforce planning and implementation section.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening. I will be giving an overview tonight of CMHA's workforce planning and implementation. Next slide. In February, in anticipation of the predicted coronavirus health crisis, CMHA established a safety team to begin working on a contingency plan for the agency. As part of the contingency planning, a telecommuting plan was developed. The telecommuting plan outlined the process and procedures employees will be required to follow. The requirements were reviewed with the employees, and the employees were required to sign off, acknowledging they understood what the expectations were for telecommuting. In efforts to move towards more mobile workforce, a CMHA work responsibility process plan was also developed. The plan provides employees with the ability to work remotely without affecting CMHA's ability to operate in an efficient and effective manner. Next slide, please. Some of the benefits of a mobile workforce include added business continuity for CMHA during emergencies and times of crisis, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. It provides employees the ability to work remotely without affecting CMHA's ability to operate. It will decrease real estate costs, and it will attract and retain qualified candidates. Next slide. CMHA work responsibility process staffing plan. Next slide.
Lisa, can you pause a moment on how this is helping us attract and retain talent?
Currently, the candidates that are out in the workforce are looking for a more flexible work option. The standard 9 to 5 is declining in popularity. You have more of a workforce in 2020. The workforce is projected to be predominantly the millennials and the X generation. That demographic group are looking for more flexible options in working at jobs, whether it be project-driven employment or the flexibility to work remotely or mobile. We have had instances where in recruiting for candidates that we've lost really good candidates because at the time we were not offering a mobile or flexible work option. So I think by moving more toward a mobile work option for candidates, that we will be able to attract and retain our current and newly graduate and other individuals, even for individuals, because a lot of individuals now, the family demographics are different, and there's different needs for each generational groups, that a more flexible work schedule would allow them to manage and take care of personal and family obligations.
Bill, I think what she's trying to say is the younger people have a different perspective on work than us old guys.
Well, no, not actually. Actually, 54% of millennials and 94% of baby boomers prefer a more flexible work option.
Well, that's probably true. I agree with that.
Now,
And
Lisa,
I would add someone who's on the oldest end that you can be as a millennial. In fact, I am categorized as an exennial, meaning that I have an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. Again, I want to add to this idea of, particularly around talent retention, is that, I'm thinking about, the number of roles that, we have in the Housing Authority, and that there are folks who might, let's say, be in Cleveland, and they might be interested in this role. And so there's a way in which, if they can, just be able to do all of the work required and have to relocate, right? That, how much more attractive the work becomes, even if when you have a family. Because what if you find yourself in a city and you found a house, you found the school district, you're passionate about the work, and then but it's like, now I have to relocate. Oh, maybe I don't. I can still work from home, and I just go to Cincinnati once a month, or I go to Cincinnati once a quarter. And so I just do think for a large, aren't we the second largest?
17.
In Ohio.
It's always a toss up between us and Columbus. So we're second or third. Yeah.
So I just do absolutely see this whole pivot. I'm not typically a person that's always like, oh, here's a silver lining about things. I'm just a very realist. Sometimes things suck. But I think that the one good thing about this COVID time and the real reimagining of workforce development is just exciting. And I just do appreciate the way that you all are like leaning into this and not just responding to the needs of a pandemic, but responding and then thinking, having a future-oriented lens is, I co-sign on all of this and agree. I'm glad that HR is a part of this and thinking about this.
so Lisa, and that's edifying, Reggie, and even Tom. Lisa, how much work can be done from home when the employee wants to do it, as opposed to regular business hours? Do we have a measurement on that?
Lisa, can I take a shot at that?
Sure.
So we're not changing the business hours that they have to work. It's just the flexibility of where they work from.
Okay.
So, but by having the information and the access to the work 24/7, we do notice we're getting more responses faster, and a little more work is getting done. Can we quantify it and give you any numbers today? But I think the two biggest things, or the two largest things that happen, actually three, that two of them you mentioned at the start before we did this. We closed a $30 million project all remotely for Pinecrest during the pandemic. And we closed Park Eden and we moved about 75 residents. We did this remotely and during a pandemic, all within a 4.5 months time frame.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I share Reggie's excitement for the opportunities of this. I think as you're suggesting, we're on the tip of the opportunity in this, in terms of everything an organization would want operationally and when it comes to the ability to attract and retain talent. So it's great. It's just great.
Okay. So taking into consideration the COVID-19 pandemic and the agency's ongoing efforts to move towards a mobile workforce, each department developed a staffing plan to ensure the agency's ability to meet the recommendations of the safety consultant and the Center for Disease Control. The staffing plan adheres to social distancing, staggered employee work schedules to limit the number of employees in the office at one time, which reduces the potential of COVID-19 spread amongst employees. The staffing plan also puts CMHA in a position to be able to provide a mobile, safe, and healthy work environment for employees while still meeting the operational needs of the agency, and will continue to allow CMHA to provide a gold standard level of service. Next slide. This slide represents a snapshot of the agency's overall daily staffing. You will see each day is a different color. Each color is representative of a different team schedule. Each employee is assigned to a team and scheduled to work on site on their assigned days. Anytime an employee is not working on site, they are still working. They're just working remotely, unless they're scheduled off for some type of leave time. So while you see the numbers of employees on site, it doesn't mean that's the only number of employees that are working. The employees that are working remotely still have access to the information they need to do to complete their task and job on a daily basis.
So the right column is net of anybody who's off for whatever reasons.
That's a total number, I think.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. The total number of employees column is net of employees who aren't at work that day, either in the office or remotely.
No.
So the total number of employees is a calculation of the employees working off site and who are working remotely. That's just the calculation of the total employees, including staffing firm contractors that we utilize.
Okay. I'm just observing that it's interesting that the total number of employees is constant, not knowing how many people might be taking a vacation day or homesick day or all the reasons that somebody doesn't show up. I think I'm missing something.
No, I think that no, it's accurate, because what the diagram shows is that every color day, we know how many employees and where they should be and will be as far as CMHA. Now, obviously, even when you come into the office, we don't know. Your direct supervisor knows. We couldn't tell you how many people came or on vacation that week or that day. But based on this schedule, we know where each and every employee should be as it pertains to work. And so we don't have to look at an employee and say, are you on today or off today? We know exactly what it is because it's a set and designed schedule.
So they're all committed to these red, white, blue, green, and yellow days by who they are. I don't know if you do it by alphabetical order or whatever, but what you're saying is, if Sam was off on Wednesday, even though he was a color blue, it would show 110, but you would deduct him from the work site because he's gone vacation that day, even though he's committed on Wednesdays. So what you're
Correct.
saying, this is just kind of like a fixed model,
Correct.
and you extract all the vacation days?
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. The next slide gives a snapshot of some of our largest departments. It represents the department staffing levels on a daily basis, and the staffing schedule. The staffing schedules meet the recommendations of CMHA's safety consultant and the Center for Disease Control in the combat of COVID-19, the spread of COVID-19. Even the staffing for each departmental area is still going to allow CMHA to meet the operational needs of the agency. So while you see there's a number of employees on site and so many working remotely, but in totality, that's the total number of employees that are scheduled to work, pending if they are they're not on leave, working on a daily basis for each one of these days. Next slide. I'm sorry. The next speaker will be Marquita Flowers, Director of Property Management. Is Marquita on?
Yeah, I am. The mute button. My apologies. Thanks, Lisa. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Marquita Flowers. I'm the Director of Property Management. Property management has been forever changed by COVID-19. My colleagues talked to you about the preparation we made in advance of COVID-19 to get PPE, personal protective equipment, to staff. They talked about the changes we've made to personnel policies so that we can maneuver our workforce in this changing environment. We also talked about how we modified our management offices, and you had an opportunity to see some of the talent and craftsmanship of some of our trades members. And also, Mark talked a lot, and I will follow up on some things as well, about the equipment that IT has provided us that allows us to telecommute and be a mobile workforce. And so through all these uncertainties and all these changes, CMHA has never lost focus. We've been steadily pursuing our goals and trying to accomplish our mission. When all these things happened with COVID-19, there were two concerns that we had in property management. One was how to make sure the staff and the residents were safe and healthy, but also about how we were going to continue the operations. Property management is a 24/7 operation. So as scientists in the nation were sending out information about how COVID-19 was contracted, we were staying very close to the Center for Disease Control, as well as with the Cincinnati Health Department, to make sure that we were up on the recommendations. And what we found is consistently, they talked about the personal protective equipment being important. So we made sure our staff had masks, gloves, face shields, the Tyvek suits, hand sanitizer, and we also made sure that we shared the information that we learned with our residents, as well as our contractors, so that they would be aware. We were fortunate to have a really great partner this year in closing the health gap. They provided CMHA with 20,000 surgical masks. And, you know, sitting here today when you can now go to the grocery store and grab a box, that may not seem as impressive, but thinking about this came to us in a month of the end of the end of April, when people were still struggling to find PPE. And so that was vital. We wanted to make sure that we were doing what we could to prevent the spread of COVID-19 within our buildings, and to make sure that our staff had a safe place to work, because our maintenance staff still had to go into those spaces to do work, but we were doing it in a smart way. Next slide, please.
And
So,
Marquita, I'm just reminded of something Greg shared with me in a conversation months ago, that your staff is certainly exemplary of this, and I think it goes beyond your department, but how CMHA workers are no different than first responders, and how, as you say, the nature of this work is, can't say not today, we're not coming out for a while, you got to respond. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And thank you for saying that, because what we recognize is that we have a higher responsibility. Some of the retail workers, industries, they can just shut down their lights and go on. But we, however, we have a duty, we have families that we have to care for. So going to your point, CMHA staff was considered to be essential workers. We modified our procedure about entering the units so that maintenance could ask if there was anyone who was ill. And if there was, we made sure that we provided that, we took some additional safety measures. Because when there's an emergency, there is an emergency. You have to go in and address whatever the issue is for that particular resident. We also increased our communication to the residents, letting them know that we needed them to stay 6 feet away from the maintenance person when they were in the unit. And again, making sure that our staff was aware that they needed to keep their PPE, and also requiring our contract staff to do the same. We also implemented what is called enhanced cleaning in our properties, where we sent in the afternoons into our multifamilies and our high-rise buildings staff to clean high-touch areas such as handrails or elevator keys or doorknobs, to try and, again, to decrease the opportunities for the spread of COVID-19 on our properties. Next slide. This
Marquita,
slide here.
Marquita, sorry. At some of our larger projects, went in, for example, it takes a lot of resources just to keep up with the litter that occurs on a property. Have you noticed any change in what it takes to keep up with the litter on the properties in the era of COVID-19? Is there?
I would like to say that there was a change, but what COVID has done is it now means that more people are at home, and they're getting out in front of their units, and the children are home. They're not in school or in the camps. So I have not seen a change in the litter. It still seems to be the same.
Has it increased?
I wouldn't say that well, I take that back. We did see an increase in the amount of furniture that was being placed on the trash. And so what we understood is that as some families were receiving some additional funds, they were opting to use that to purchase furniture.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So this illustrates 3 areas that we considered when we were looking at how we're going to enable the staff to work remotely effectively and efficiently. So we increased our communication to our staff. When we talk about buy-in, we made sure that they knew the why. Why were we doing each one of these steps? Why are you getting the laptop? Why are you getting the extra monitor? When we worked with the consultant, we explained to them why the spaces had a decreased occupancy count and how that was playing into having a safe workspace for staff. So I think that staff understands that we've taken a lot of time to really make sure that we have a good plan as they prepare to come back in with this modified schedule that Lisa just shared with you. Also, communication. We talked about the buy-in, but the communication piece is important too. So when you start talking about changing our SOPs,
I think we might have lost her.
So if we did lose her when Marquita comes back, so what Marquita was saying is that the education about how to use the PPEs, they increased the communication in departments on having weekly meetings, and then the full department has meetings centered around communication every Friday with the entire, including maintenance, so they can talk about any new events, any issues, problems, or concerns that anyone has. And then when you talk about the infrastructure, we talked a lot about that from Mark with the IT equipment that was purchased and making sure that those things are operating and working properly. And then we had a few hiccups with some of the handhelds for the maintenance, so we had to do some additional training. And then I think Will mentioned about the enhanced cleaning we did of the vehicles. And so we did a third party to show the maintenance staff how to clean, what areas to clean, and then before just providing them with the materials to do the cleaning themselves. Next slide.
I also just wanted to add one thing. Marquita put in the chat box that she lost connection. I also, again, wanted to say I appreciate the work that we're doing. I just wanted to personally share, I do a lot of work in the community. I was actually in Whitten Terrace last Friday evening. And similar to what I see in Avondale is that we are not seeing social distancing. We're not seeing mask wearing, and we're not seeing small gathering. We're seeing large gatherings with lots of people not wearing masks. And so we know, based on the science and the trends that we're seeing, that CMHA is going to be dealing with COVID positive cases a lot for a while now. So I just think that these pivots are necessary and they are good. And I think that we just need to really be prepared. We're doing everything we can on our end in terms of like facilities and the offices, but in general, I think that they're just, even throughout the city, we're still behind in terms of a cultural shift and really doing the work we need to do to mitigate person-to-person transfer. So I just feel like these processes and these practices will be with us for a while.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I'm so glad you said that, because we see the same thing. And so part of the email I think I sent the board the other day about bringing the testing on site and working with the city on the 3 major sites is because of exactly what you're saying, is that we're trying to keep as many residents safe as possible. But as you're saying, they're not adhering to a lot of the warnings that have been given out to follow to keep themselves safe. So we know that We have some cases that haven't been determined. And so the ideal is to make sure that we keep the staff as safe as possible, because we know at some point, and I'm thinking, we really are thinking that October to December is going to be so critical when that flu season, and actually probably going through February, when that flu season hits and doubles with COVID. We just want to keep as many people as safe as possible, because if we get one person could affect the entire site, and we would be without personnel being able to respond to the needs of the residents. So you're exactly right. That is exactly what we're trying to plan for, and make sure we still are able to provide some level of service during that time frame, because it's going to, I agree with you, it's going to hit us hard.
Yeah. But what I hear, and I'm glad to hear that is on your radar as boldly as you're describing, Greg. But I listened to what Reggie observed, and I'm thinking, it's pretty hard to deal with this on the back end. Is there anything we can do on the front end? And the only word that comes to mind is enforcement. That's not the appropriate word. Maybe education is a better word. But what do you have any observations? What's being done elsewhere, Reggie, because of your work that takes you on sites like this?
I agree. Yeah, no. I mean, we're doing the work. We can only control our environments, and I think at this point it really is about protecting CMHA operations so that we can continue to operate. Because it's not illegal, right, to to not wear a mask, right? We're not enforcing those things. And so I think the thing that's really challenging and frustrating is that, no, I mean, you can do the education, you can provide the PPE, you can do the testing, but I think that this is really a larger sort of in general, I would say even regional issue. So the organization I work for, we also have properties in Boston and on the East Coast. And just in general, that region is more COVID compliant, when you control for all socioeconomic status and when you control for urban and rural than here in Ohio. So I just think that we are in a different space, and that what we have to do and our focus has to be how do we make sure that our staff is protected, knowing that they are highly likely to come in contact with asymptomatic and symptomatic folks with COVID. Yeah.
Correct. And we are doing a lot of education. We do a lot of one calls weekly. We send a lot of flyers out to get so people are educated. We send flyers out on how to use masks. I mean, we do all of those things to try to get the education out, but the compliance of people it's really up to them.
Reggie, do you have any sense how many people who are gathering? It sounds to me like to have a party. How many people are not our tenants attending these events, social events? Do you have any sense of that?
Oh no, they were just residents. They were just residents walking from the store. There was nothing. It wasn't, extravagant parties. It was just, everyone sitting out on their porch.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm relieved because
it wasn't like a party or anything. That it was just normal socializing. But we know that normal socializing is, causes sort of it's a COVID. I call it dens of COVID spreading. Yeah. And that's what that's exactly what it was.
Okay. So, all right. Thanks for that clarification of my
But
ignorance.
Mr. Miles, you should know when it's warm out, they do have parties, barbecues, all of these things, and they have people that come over and visit and all of that. So they are doing that as well.
Hmm. Well, I don't know. You know, you just can't help but wonder that it's so much easier to deal with this on the front end than the back end after there is a large outbreak. But I say that knowing full well that you're stepping up the communications. I guess the very act of putting people on site testing should amplify the fact that they have a role to play in the transmission of this infections and transmission. Yeah, it's all very sad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My apologies for that interruption.
I finished Marquita, I finished the slide for you, so you can go to the next slide.
Can I make one point, Mr. Johnson? That and this is about the cloud, and I don't know how many know that CMHA asset management, and actually so does Housing Choice Voucher, has an electronic filing system. So when we have individuals who are working remotely and they're trying to process paperwork and interact with tenant files, they don't have to physically go and grab a file. They can go into our electronic filing system and obtain the documents that they need so that they can proceed. Okay, next slide. Mark? Okay.
Sorry, it was stuck. I don't know. I clicked and clicked.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so we had a lot of discussion already about the maintenance staff, and Mark did a wonderful job of explaining how the handheld system works. What I do want to do is take an opportunity to point out to you some of the efficiencies that are gained. So when the maintenance staff is using their handheld, we are no longer having to push and pull paper. And you know, when you have 100 maintenance work orders that come in, and you're flipping through paper, it becomes a paper chase to make sure something's closed out or gets updated. But by using the handheld, that does away with that piece of it. And makes us more efficient, and it gives us more real-time information regarding the work orders. Also, the handheld provides us with can alert the maintenance staff to emergencies and urgent work orders a lot faster because it's color-coded, so it brings it to their attention. And then the other piece I wanted to say is the reporting mechanism that comes with this allows us to track the performance of individual staff members and their work product. Next slide, please. So this particular slide is an overview of the additional changes we made in our management offices as it relates to some of our major processes, which is our recertification process, which we're required to do for residents annually, and then our eligibility process, which is the processing of our applicants. And so previously, we were doing a face-to-face interview. And when COVID-19 caused us to take another look at that and re-envision that process, and there's no requirement to have the face-to-face interview. So what we went to is a mail-in system where we'll send the packet to the recertification specialist, to the resident, They send it back to us and we process it. We do telephone interviews with applicants. We allow residents and applicants to submit electronic documents. And so under these circumstances, we're seeing that coming in that way a lot more. And then we already talked about our drop boxes that are located at our various management offices. And so what we recognize that by moving to this system where we did not require the resident to come in, we actually were enhancing our customer service to them and overcoming some barriers that some of our population has to obtaining housing. And that is that transportation piece. So they don't have to find money or tokens to come in to do their recertification or to go through their briefing process. There's no loss of income because they had to take off to come to one of our appointments or need to make childcare arrangements. So we thought that was an important and a real benefit to our residents that we moved to a process like this.
That's terrific. That's just terrific. I got to believe that each of those are very real issues for our tenants who never have enough money.
Yep.
Right.
Good stuff.
So we talked about virtual leasing and social distancing leasing. So what we are able to do when the individual has some technology, a phone with a ability to do video, we're able to go into the unit and basically do a virtual property tour where we're using the technology of our phones to go around the apartment or the house and show the individual the apartment. And from that video, they're able to give us an indication about whether they would like to lease that apartment or not. And so the really good thing about that is that it saves some time for both the applicant as well as us, in that if they don't like the apartment, they did not spend the time to have to come in to it as well. One of the things we also talked about virtual leasing, which would allow them to sign their lease electronically once they've had an opportunity to see the unit. Okay. Then we also recognize that we have enhanced our communication and ability to give instructions to our staff. So with the use of Zoom and the conference call numbers, the property managers are staying very connected to all of their staff members. They have a daily site conference call with all the maintenance staff as well as the individuals in the office. And then I have a weekly department call with all of the department, from the maintenance supervisors, the property managers, the area managers, maintenance aides, office clerks. We all have a group conference call to talk about the things that are changing in the agency, and to especially as we've changed our SOPs and our systems, making sure that if anyone has any questions or in need of training, that we stay very connected to that, and that we respond very quickly. And I think Mr. Johnson mentioned the one-call system. One of the ways that we're getting information out to our residents faster is the use of the one-call system. So when we obtained information about the symptoms of COVID-19, we turned that around and put that into a script and got that information out to all of our households. The other feature of the one-call system is it has a polling capability. So we are able to ask a question and then get information back from residents as well. So you can imagine we don't have to use the mail system. We can get information back from our residents
in a matter of hours. Okay,
Now,
next slide. Go ahead.
is that only if the resident takes the call live?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. But we can, the system is also set up that if they don't take the call, that it'll call them back if there's a voicemail or something like that. But we've found some success with that to kind of get a sense and engage what's happening out there, especially as it relates to issues surrounding COVID.
Good. I'm a big believer in that. I just think that that's an excellent way to communicate timely messages.
Yes. And the technology piece, we talked about that the office staff has laptops, cell phones. We're using the electronic filing system that I mentioned to you earlier, and using digital signatures as well. So the property manager can take their devices, and if we need them to go to a different area, they can set up in an apartment somewhere. If we need them to begin leasing, because they have all of these devices that are right there at their fingertips that they can take with them. Mark mentioned that the Rent Cafe, that is going to be at 24/7 access to the information for the residents, and then there is an applicant portal that also is going to come online, so that if they have any questions, they can go right there. And what I will tell you is that telephone calls to the management office has always been at the first of the month, just double checking what's the amount of the rent. And so it will, as you mentioned, reduce the number of calls coming into the management office, because it'll be right there at your fingertips, and you can access it at any time, whether or not our management office is open or not. And we already mentioned the virtual tours that are going to be coming up with representatives from HUD field office. Next slide.
You know, the Six Sigma team and other staff efforts to find ways to improve our customer service, it's just so important. I gotta believe it's so appreciated by people, particularly tenants who are trying to do their business with us. You know, it's one thing if I'm a tenant, I've got a question and I call and I'm waiting for a call back, but I'm at work and I can't take that call. The idea that, as you say, in time, there'll be 24/7 access to so many of these questions that can be answered just by going to a website. I just think that moves our customer service capability so far ahead from where it was 7 years ago.
Right.
So I just think that's fabulous.
Yes, we're excited about that module.
And it's just win, 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 you know? It's good for us. It's as good for us as it is for any of our customers.
Right. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, you know, property management is forever changed. It's not just that, you know, responding to COVID-19. These are things that even customers are demanding. And so what you see is the industry itself is changing. Not just affordable housing, but conventional housing are all looking at ways to lease virtually, to do the inspections virtually, to provide more access independent of the management offices and staff to the tenants that they're serving. So things are evolving in the industry. And as you can see by the bullet points that I put up here on the screen or on the PowerPoint, we are really ahead of the game. We're working with all of these things are about to come online if they're not already online as we speak. online payments is something that we already offer to our residents. So next slide, please. I'd like to introduce Lisa Isham, who is the Director of Housing Choice Voucher.
Just one more minute, Marquita. How does what we do, how we respond different than the for-profit property management world?
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways that the way we respond is different? If I live in a multifamily building and I have a property manager and I've got a plumbing issue, are the responses different because we're a housing authority?
I think that we are, I don't know that it's as much about being a housing authority as about our value, Mr. Miles. I think that we're very responsive. We have individuals who are on staff in the evenings to respond to any issue that a resident has. The other property management companies have different approaches to that, and I think that they try to be responsive, but I think that we're very responsive to our residents in the evenings whenever there's some type of emergency. I would say that another thing to think about in terms of the differences, I think that some of the property management companies, at least this is from talking to individuals and to from some of the things that I've read, Mr. Miles, is that that not all property management companies put the same value in expanding their technology, and so while COVID-19 came and forced a number of companies to evolve because of the pandemic, I think that we had several things that were in place and ready to launch that really helped us and that put us in the forefront of how property management is being done in the country.
Got it. Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm going to talk about the Housing Choice Voucher. Thanks, Marquita, for the introduction. During this pandemic, the HCV department has continued to provide service to our clients. To ensure that staff is doing this, management is able to monitor productivity reports on a daily basis. While COVID-19 has forced changes with some of our staff working remotely, some functions require that people are in the office to process some paperwork. And an example of that is mail, stuff that's coming into the office via Dropbox or regular U.S. mail. We have staff in the office daily to scan that information so it's accessible to the housing specialist. Protocols have been set up for the safety of staff, clients, landlords who are conducting business with us, as stated in some of the earlier presentations. Next slide. Some of the ways that HCV is changing how we conduct our business. In-person voucher briefings are now done via a video that has been posted on a newly created YouTube channel to allow our clients to watch prior to issuance of a voucher. Landlord orientations are also now being conducted via the use of Zoom.
How do we know that our prospective tenant has watched that YouTube video?
We require them to sign a certification stating that they have watched it prior to us issuing them a voucher. The HCV and the IT department has created a way, as you heard earlier, to conduct virtual inspections in lieu of inspectors having to physically enter a unit. Our inspectors, as Marquita also stated, with her maintenance staff, before they enter a unit, they are asking questions of the families. They're asking, has anyone in the family been ill? They are informing them that they have to maintain a 6-foot distance. They've also been issued gloves, masks, protective suits, goggles, hand sanitizer, tissues for their personal protections. As Will had mentioned earlier, all of the inspector vehicles were professionally disinfected by a third-party vendor. They've also been provided with supplies in order to keep the vehicle sanitized. Inspectors have the equipment to safely work remotely, and they've been able to actually pick up more inspections because now they're saving on commuting time to and from the office, and then, time in the office. Next slide. Systems were put in place to allow our clients to submit requests for tenancy approvals electronically via email and fax. Owners are now able to submit RTAs for processing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at their convenience. As mentioned earlier, drop boxes have been placed where clients can submit documents to the department without having to enter the office building, reducing foot traffic. Having the boxes outside in the traffic pattern that we have it also gives them 24/7 access to CMHA because they can submit the documents before work, after work, at their convenience. HCV suspended in-person recertifications, and we are instead allowing our clients to recertify via mail. Packets are mailed to them. They send the information back either via mail, or they're able to submit the documentation in the office or via Dropbox, which is strongly encouraged.
Now, if there are outstanding issues on the recertification, can a tenant and HCV staff connect by phone to resolve those
Yes.
not in good order issues?
Yes. All housing specialists, basically all personnel, have been issued cell phones and laptops. So if there's a need for a client to either phone a housing specialist, they will be connected through our customer service department to that housing specialist, or an email is sent to the housing specialist and they'll return a call to the client.
Got it.
In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, HUD did issue waivers under the CARES Act, which provided some streamlined processes for housing authorities across the nation. PHAs are allowed to forego third-party income verifications for changes in income. Voucher holders can now submit tenant supply documentation and self-certify to any household changes.
So,
I'm sorry.
And maybe you're getting to this, and I do beg your pardon if so, but is that a temporary suspension that allows them to, on their honor, have their income changes accepted by the agency, or do they have to present documentation of those changes at some point in the future when this waiver period is over.
So how do specialists do act if they have the documentation and allow them to submit it? If they don't have the documentation because some employers are closed down, then we allow them to self-certify. On their next annual recertification, we'll catch it through HUD's EIV system, which is an electronic system that verifies income.
Okay, got it.
HUD also allowed housing authorities to provide extensions on the term of the voucher. So vouchers that were set to expire during the months between March and August have been extended until October 31st. We delayed terminations, vouchers for non-serious program violations to not risk families becoming homeless during this pandemic. While the waiver allowed for PHAs and families to delay recertifications until December 31st, CMHA didn't have to because of we being ahead of the game. We just instead switched to the mail-in certification process. And we're allowing our clients to submit verifications via the drop-off box in the office. They can take a picture on their phone, email it to the housing specialist. They can do any of those things. What we are looking for is for the Rent Cafe, once it comes up, then they'll be able to recertify completely online.
Do you think other PHAs are taking that approach? I think it's the enlightened approach because you're smoothing out the work. You know, at some point you have to do all this catch up.
Yes. While some housing authorities have decided to not conduct the recertifications, some have allowed the clients to recertify via mail. Another option we are currently looking at is having the ability to recertify via a kiosk. That's early stages. We're just looking at it to see how that'll interact with our current software system. But I think, it's a balance depending on the housing authority, how many clients they have, and the region that they're in.
Mm-hmm. Where would the kiosk be?
Yeah, and it also depends, if I may, it depends on the leadership at the housing authority, whether they believe in whether they are true investigators or processing or administrators of programs. So the PHAs that are taking this envelope and pushing it forward, I wouldn't say that it was over 50% of the PHAs. A lot of them are trying to figure out how can they go back to some of the similar systems that they did have as well. So I would say we're really pushing the envelope on how we are looking at processing now and in the future.
Yes.
Rather than punting. I mean, the work's got to be done at some point. Why not?
Right.
Keep up with it.
Yeah.
What's a kiosk, Lisa?
There's kiosks that are out there, and it's just a machine that allows clients to interact with it, to be able to process certifications, send messages to staff, and conduct some of the in-person processes that they're currently doing now. We're in the early stages of looking at the kiosk as an option.
Mm-hmm.
My vision would be that they could be placed out in the community for easy access, maybe, for clients, not, again, reducing the foot traffic for our offices.
Okay.
But making it more convenient for them to conduct business with the agency.
Interesting.
Next slide, please. So working remotely. So working remotely has allowed the HCB department to limit the number of people in the office, as stated and as recommended, as stated previously by Lisa Thomas, and recommended by our third party consultant, to 20 persons in the office at a time. In accordance with the best practices that third party recommended, we have those teams, so we're able to, know who is in the office on any particular day, outside of individuals that may have some type of leave time. It makes it convenient if we have to do contact tracing. We know who was in the office on any particular day. In addition to that, working remotely has allowed our inspectors to be able to perform more inspections. They're doing, on average, about 3 additional inspections, because we've eliminated the need for them to come into the office to pick up a schedule, for them to, come into the office, park their vehicles, then, transfer to their personal vehicles and end their day. Remote working has also reduced the time that staff is out of the office for illness or personal conflicts. We've had a few people within our department that was forced to quarantine at home. Fortunately enough, while they were quarantined, they were able to still work remotely. So there was no lost time off work for them, and no lost productivity for us. Working remotely has also offered staff a better work-life balance due to the reduced commute time and the ability to work longer if needed, without having to leave to pick up kids from daycare or, other personal obligations like that. Next slide. Next slide. So here you'll see the drop boxes that were placed in our parking lot to allow for clients to submit information. In the picture next to that, you'll see an inspector with the personal equipment that was issued, conducting an inspection on a vacant unit. Next slide. Here you'll see some of the modifications in our building, with the plexiglass, the sneeze guards, the signage that has been placed in hallways, to have people remember to maintain a safe distance and to wait their turn, when going down the narrower hallways. There's another picture of the drop-off boxes, and you see attached to the drop-off boxes that when clients submit information to us, they fill out this carbon copy receipt that's attached to an envelope, so they're able to detach a copy for themselves, for their records, and to safely place all of their documentation in a secure envelope for us to retrieve from the Dropbox. And the other picture shows some of the signage that was placed in our common areas, near our copy machines, reminding people to disinfect after each use. Next slide. So now I'll take the opportunity to introduce Joe Norton, who will give you a preview of CMHA moving forward. Thank you.
Next slide, Mark. Thank you, Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate and construction and development. All the hard work and early preparation early on has paid off. It has been mentioned several times. Development closings have continued. Recently, Pinecrest in July, Park Eden in August. All of this hard work to get to that finish line happened remotely. This allowed improved processes during that process with electronic signatures. It allowed faster response to issues that may have come up during this closing process. It had great utilization of our Zoom meetings for a quicker, more productive collaboration during our meetings. We continue to submit new funding applications. RAD planning has continued. Construction, which was considered essential businesses, was it business as usual? Almost. We did experience a few hurdles that needed to be overcome. New standards and procedures were put in place, mainly COVID-19 safety protocols. All of our contractors were required to prepare a COVID-19 safety plan. We simply wanted to ensure the safety of our contractors, employees, and residents were paramount so that we did not make anything worse. During the worst uptick in Ohio, the month of May, CMHA decided to stop all relocation activities. This was to ensure the safety of all. This did not stop construction activities. It did create a issue that had to be overcome with relocation because certain number of units still had to be relocated. So that was a monumental task by our relocation department, and they completed that task on time to allow for these different closings. Next slide, please. Economic inclusion is big for the agency. Again, things needed to be changed, working remotely. New forms and self-certification needed to be created or modified, allowing for electronic signature and submission. New virtual workshops were designed with community partners to help meet the needs of businesses. We continued virtually with business tool workshops. They are also posted for future viewing in case someone missed that particular meeting. What has really happened with this remote working is greater participation from individuals that can attend these different types of workshops. In the past, when we did face-to-face meetings, we typically had anywhere from 5 to 15 participants. Now, most recently, the two most recent workshops we completed, we had anywhere from 25 to 30 participants being able to attend. Wow. I truly believe that these Zoom meetings allow people to continue with their day-to-day lives. They can join these Zoom meetings from their home, from their place of business, from any location that they choose, as long as they have some type of connectivity. I think it's really apparent that connectivity is available to all by the number of participants that we have. Next slide, please.
That's terrific, Joe.
It is. It's really outstanding, and I think it's a trend that's going to continue. Procurement, along with everybody else, needs to continue. They created a purchasing manual as a quick physical and electronic resource for purchase orders, quotes, life safety, and all contracts. Non-construction submissions were changed to all electronic rather than physical binders so that contractors could submit their proposals at any time prior to the deadline while social distancing. This one thing alone, in my experience in working with the procurement department and in other evaluations we have to do, has made my life easier as well. I can now access all of these documents electronically, review them. I don't need to print my hard copies. It makes it easier to go through and review and score different proposals that I might be working on. Good. In lieu of in-person workshops on how to prepare a proposal, videos were prepared and are available at any time on CMHA's website. I think one of the biggest things for the procurement department, which affects me and the rest of the agency is a large number of contracts that have increased in the quarter after COVID changes. This is apparent in the third and fourth quarter of COVID. In third quarter, we had 89 contracts awarded. In the fourth quarter, we had 87 contracts awarded. I think Mr. Johnson alluded to the idea behind how quickly we can get things. Rima also mentioned that at any given time, we know where any procurement stands via electronic documentation. So it's really been beneficial overall. Next slide, please. The legal department utilizes telecommuting work plan to ensure the provisions of services to the department's internal and external customers. Contract review and negotiation through, again, electronic signatures, remote office equipment. Pinecrest Masterlease is a perfect example of contract negotiations via remote access. Continuation of court appearances. Like both Lisa and Marquita stated, sometimes in-person meetings still take place, but it's still a continuation. Modified its hearing process in order to continue the administrative hearings, which resulted in offering hearing participants greater options to attend the hearings. The teleconferencing, Zoom meeting, all of it limited social distancing requirements. Next slide. Business continuity processes via electronic referral and submissions of reasonable accommodations and VAWA transfers, eviction prevention referrals. Again, work continues at CMHA. So the slide is an example of the referrals and how the legal department has addressed those reasonable accommodations for the agency. Next slide, please.
So this is the end of our presentation. As you can see, a lot of work has gone into the tip of the transformation of the organization. And so at this point, does any board member have any additional questions before we close out the presentation?
I don't have any. I think you all made excellent presentations. It really gives us a lot of confidence that that we are successfully moving forward, even during a pandemic. And we're grateful for your service and the great job you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
Exactly, Tom and Laverne. I had no idea. I thought lots of things were going on, but I had no idea that you were, doing so many things. Yeah. They say necessity is the mother of invention. It's on steroids here in this presentation. And
we took the pandemic pushed us probably faster, but what we decided to do is use that instead of as something that hampered us. We decided to use it and maximize it to push us into the next phase of our transformation of the organization. So a lot of these things, especially the IT, the laptops, there's a lot of rough Zoom meetings, a lot of long Zoom meetings. We got a lot more to go, but I think you can see where we're thinking, and we appreciate the fact that you sat through the presentation and asked really great questions, but we also appreciate you allowing us to continue to move forward with this whole process. So after Gary's going to send you a copy of the presentation, so you'll have it if you wanted to sift through a couple things. And then obviously if you sift through it and you say, oh, I do have a question about that, obviously you can just give me a call or send me an email, and I'll be able to answer those for you.
And I just want to say one more thing. I'm struck by how you've had a willingness to push yourselves well beyond what would be good enough. And it's not lost on a fiduciary board member that you're maximizing the resources of the CARES Act, $7 million, at a time when it makes a lot of difference to the agency, that we have the federal government participating in the cost of so many of these efforts. And I'm just thinking, gee, is there anything retro, any expenditures retro that we could bill the CARES Act for?
They've been pretty strict on that, so we're going to stay between the lines. But some of the stuff that we left off about all of the partnerships that we've garnered and how many meals that we've partnered, and every Tuesday handing out meals, and over 6,000 meals that we've used our maintenance staff to do. We kind of left that out, and we left that out on purpose. Not that it's not important, but we wanted to make sure that you're able to see that the flow of the operation is being maintained. And one of the things that we've been talking about that we are going to continue to update our SOPs and processes with, we just showed you guys about how we can process information. But the flip side of that is now we're getting more information faster. So we have to figure out how to process that, because when Lisa and Marquita and Mary and Joe they're getting recertifications back faster, that means people are scanning them in, dropping in drop boxes. And so their expectation of us is different because they sent it to us, they know we got it. And so now we have to retrain who we've trained to do these jobs, retrain them to use the technology, and then update our processes to make sure that it doesn't fall into a bottleneck. So we're going through all of those changes as well, but it's fast paced and exciting all at the same time.
Yeah, what you're describing, even from the distance of a seat like mine, before it was a sequential process. Whoever had the file was the only person who could work on it. Now it's a simultaneous process, perhaps.
Yep.
As many people who need to be involved in the task can largely do it simultaneously.
Yeah, and a couple, Marquita and Lisa, Mark, they hit on it a little bit, but the biggest key is they know when the person got the file now, because the system will recognize. And the other thing that we didn't harp on, but Mark hit on it a little bit, we don't track our employees, but we track our equipment. So if you have a piece of our equipment, we know where it is 24 hours, 24/7. We know where that equipment is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's all we have, and we can move to the next steps.
Any chance we can take a 45-second break?
That's my request. Let's do that. Let's just make it 3 minutes for pragmatics' sake. And let's see, what time is it? It's 8:22. We'll reconvene at 8:25.
All right. Ooh, Grandma, tired of this meeting.
It is long.
Let me go get me something to eat right quick.
My mom has that one.
Which one?
That bridge.
Oh, the bridge. Oh,
My mom has that. She has the grass and space. So she has a lot. I'll say your seat and I'll say your seat, and then I won't touch anything. I'll just sit in it, okay?
Don't touch a thing.
Yes, I will.
So you're not muted. I love hearing your conversation, but you're not.
Thank you. You may have though. Look at it. I'll bring you something back. But you can't go. Look at it.
Okay. Are we ready to resume? I beg your pardon if I'm late.
Ready.
The volume on? Am I being heard by everyone?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes,
Ready.
okay. All right. So, Greg, is Greg with us? Yeah. No. Oh. Greg, are you with us? I'm looking at a screen that shows Greg's mic is muted and his name instead of his picture.
Yeah, he stopped the video.
Okay.
He had to go do something.
Okay. My inclination is to wait for him.
Okay.
Anyone object to that or disagree with it?
No problem.
Thank you. I guess it's something urgent if he's not able to come back, so. Okay, we see Greg again. Now we'll continue with public comments. Item 5 in our agenda is public comments, and we don't have any requests to speak this month. Moving on, item 6 is the JRAB Ross grant update. We do not have a JRAB Ross grant update. Item 7 is discussion of recommendations. Item 7A is the financial report. Resolution 5429, approving the bad debt write-off for June and July 2020. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions about the resolution? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, resolution 5430, approving the fiscal year 2020 June unaudited financial statements for the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, resolution 5431, approving the fiscal year 2020 HUD forms 52681. That is the year-end settlement statements for mod rehab.
Motion.
Thank you. A second? Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Item 7B is request for approval of solicit bids for the following items. Resolution 5432, providing authorization to proceed with the request for proposals and solicitations for general goods and services from outside vendors.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Item 7C is resolutions to award contract renewals. Resolution 5433, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to sign the second one-year contract extension option for contract 2018-4004. Legal services for construction, real estate, and development with Reno and Kavanaugh, PLLC, Saxon, Gilmore, and Caraway, PA, Ballard Spar, LLP, Braden, Head, and Ritchie, LLP, Hawkins, Delafield, and Wood, LLP, and Nixon Peabody, LLP, in a not-to-exceed amount of $200,000 annually for a maximum 5-year contract paid for by management services and capital funds.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Hey, Greg, Joy, maybe you can answer this. Was Dinsmore on this list before or no?
No,
They weren't?
no.
Okay.
They were on another list of councils.
I'm sorry, I was answering, but I was muted. I'm sorry.
Tom, they were a vendor to us in the past, but correct me if I'm wrong, Greg and Joy. They had a conflict and they took themselves out of the pool.
That's correct. They withdrew.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, didn't Reno and Kavanaugh have a similar situation in the past where they withdrew from rep?
Not to my knowledge. Not Reno.
No.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, resolution 5435, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to sign the first one-year contract extension option to negotiate a developer's agreement for contract 2019-4010, development partner for English Woods with the Michaels Company, LLP. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Item 7B.
Mr. Chair, did we do 5434?
No,
Yeah, I believe.
Thank you.
We did?
No, we did
No,
not.
we did not.
You skipped it.
We did not.
That's why I'm a little confused here because I'm off.
Yeah, it's my mistake. I completely overlooked resolution 5434. Any problem with me just going back to it now?
No problem at all.
All right, I beg your pardon. Tired mistake. Resolution 5434, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to sign the first one-year contract extension option for contract 2019-4007, architectural services for 9% low-income housing tax credit with Berardi and Partners Incorporated, paid for by low-income housing tax credits and other development funds, loans, and/or grants. Is there a motion to accept? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. So, let's see. Now,
We're on 5436.
5436. Okay. Adopt a resolution to award the following construction contracts. Resolution 5436, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to enter into a contract for solicitation 2020-3009, facade repair at the President for the amount of $284,000 $400 funded through capital funds.
Motion.
Second.
A second, okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a correction.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Go ahead, Janelle.
Yeah, in the memo, the ICE was incorrectly given as the same as the base bid. The ICE was actually $289,807, so the base bid came in below the ICE.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the way it should be. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, roll call. Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Resolution 5437, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to enter into contract for solicitation 2020-3007, San Marco door and window replacement for the amount of $103,840, paid for by capital funds.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now adopt a resolution, the general category, Resolution 5438, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to execute all documents necessary and submit a Choice Neighborhoods Implementation Grant application, and to authorize the Board of Commissioners chairperson to sign the associated application certifications for the implementation grant. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to go into it, but this is a pretty big deal, exciting. And I guess I saw something about a choice coordinator. For what project?
We want to offer this application for Stanley Row.
Okay.
So it would be for the West End revitalization if we were to get it. Yeah,
Wow.
So we're pretty excited about the opportunity, and I mean, it could bring upwards of 30 plus million to the project.
Yeah, I have a long history with Choice, so I am both excited and also,
fearful.
Exactly. This is great news.
Yeah, but I like where Reggie is going. The opportunity to continue the transformation in the West End with this much real estate. Wow. Okay, so without any other questions, we'll move on to the roll call. Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, Resolution 5439, authorizing the CEO of the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority to apply for the disposition of 18 Mariana Terrace apartments as part of the conversion to the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program and project-based vouchers.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. This passes. Let me turn the page. Now, Resolution 5440, adopting the significant amendment to the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority's fiscal year 2020 annual plan to incorporate changes required for the rental assistance demonstration conversion of Mariana Terrace.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Resolution 5441, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to negotiate and enter into a contract for solicitation 2020-1008, Community Partnership Project, Policing with the Urban League of Greater Cincinnati, Incorporated, in a not-to-exceed amount of $240,000 annually, or the board-approved budget for a maximum 5-year contract paid for by operating funds.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, Resolution 5442, renewing the authority of the CEO to execute and sign contracts in an amount not to exceed $100,000.
Motion.
Thank you. A second? Need a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The resolution passes.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Resolution 5443, renewing the authority of the CEO of CMHA to authorize and sign time extensions and change orders to contracts not to exceed 20% of the initial contract.
Motion.
price. Thank you. A second? A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell? Is that an aye?
Yes. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Resolution 5444, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to enter into cooperative purchasing agreements with vendors and contractors in compliance with 2 CFR 200.318E as a means to implement bulk purchasing and provide efficiencies and cost savings to the authority.
Motion.
Motion. Thank you. A second? Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman? Aye. Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Resolution 5445, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to enter into a contract 2020-1016 for off-duty police services with the City of Cincinnati Police Department in a not-to-exceed amount of $350,000 annually for a 5-year contract paid for by operational funds, administrative fees, and management services funds.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Any questions?
Yeah. Mark, could you tell us what we spent last year on these same services?
That's a good question.
Janelle, do you know the answer to that, Janelle?
Not right off. I know our spending was a little bit higher last year because of some of the events of the last few months. I don't have an answer. I can give that to Mr. Johnson to forward to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
So you're saying the last few months we've obviously had an uptick? Yeah. Okay.
Is that what you're saying, Janelle? Or are you saying?
Yes.
Okay. Higher than last year. Okay, got it.
I guess
Different circumstances.
the only question that I had, I guess, is do we anticipate that? I was asking about the question at 350 because I'm curious if we anticipate that we might at some point exceed that in light of some of the things that are going on currently. Greg, you might be able to address that.
I'm going to say I don't think so. I'm actually hoping that you approved a couple resolutions above this community policing. And really what that is going to be located out at Winton and Findlater, where we're going to use the Urban League to use the CMHA model. And that CMHA model is a spinoff of the cooperation agreement that was done years ago, the rioting in OTR.
Right.
Basically, the Urban League will have young community leaders that'll be working in that community to meet with the residents, to meet with the police department, to kind of bring them together on some of the issues and break down barriers. We, as staff, we talked about this a lot because we were just going to hire additional police officers. And we thought that this, with everything else that's going on in the world and in our community, we thought this would be a better way of trying to reduce crime and build some better communication. And then I had a conversation with Ellen over at Cincinnati Fund, where I said, Ellen, if we see that, you know, we're making some strides, we're reducing crime and improving lives, would you be willing to help us fund this in year 2 and 3 if we can show some benefits? And she said, well, give me a presentation about it because that sounds like what we want to see as well. So I said, you know, we'll put our own money, skin in the game in the beginning. And then if I could show you some, you know, some things that we improved, then they'll be willing to put some of their money in. So instead of buying more police, we're using this. And so we're hoping that that'll reduce our use on the off duty because they usually spend 90% of their time at Winton and Findlay.
Okay. Well, that's a good approach. If it works, that's great.
Yeah. We figured it's a great approach just based on everything that's happening now.
Yep. That's good.
When will they commence at Winton? Did you say Winton?
It'll be Winton and Findlay later, and as soon as we can get the contract signed and countersigned, Marquita and Mary, they'll have a kickoff meeting with them to go over what are the touch points and the points that we would like to see and set up establishment of meeting dates. And they probably will get started out there, I'm going to say sometime in October.
Did you say October, Greg?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any more questions.
Very good. Roll call, Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion passes. Resolution passes. Now, Resolution 5446, authorizing adoption of CMHA's personnel policies.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Roll call, Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman, aye.
Sorry.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Aye, and the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Resolution 5447, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to extend the agency's work responsibility process in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and as an ongoing future development of a mobile workforce.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, Greg, I know that they touched on it in their presentation, but I guess I just want to, I trust we're going to have some kind of parameters in place to determine that that we're still getting the same productivity as we were getting if they were all in the office.
Definitely.
I know that there are a number of companies who are saying, look, we thought we were doing great. We're not doing so great. Our productivity's down. We want to move some people back to the office. And so I just want to make sure that we have those parameters in place to say, okay, you know what, hey, maybe we're doing great here, but maybe we need to do better here. And I'm assuming you have that. But
yes, one of the things we're going to do is comparisons between last year, first quarter, this year, first quarter.
Okay.
Some of the numbers are skewed. So what I want to do is get a full year or half a year. And the reason is, like, recertifications will be way up right now because of the pandemic, and I won't be doing apples to apples.
Right.
So I want to make sure we get into some period where we got some continuity and then look at the apples to apples. So for example, we chart every call that comes into my office on a complaint from a landlord, resident, and all of those things. And then we chart, then Gary charts exactly what that is.
Okay.
So we want to see if the cafe is going to reduce the number of landlord calls and complaints we get, the number of resident complaints as far as work orders, and then also rent statements, if they're able to view once we get some of these things up. Then on top of that, as Lisa and Marquita mentioned, this system has the ability so they can physically go in. If your realm is recertification or leasing of units, they can go in and pull those numbers on work orders and who exactly is completed, how many they completed daily, weekly, monthly. recertifications, daily, weekly, monthly, and all of those pieces are the engines that'll tell us if people are pushing and pulling information. So those are areas that we talked about. We're going to make sure we're paying close attention to. As Lisa said, and as part of her policy, when people are accepting equipment, what the condition of the equipment when they were given to them, how it should be kept, all of those things. We changed our policy about how much, when do you pay back, how much do you pay back? If you damage the equipment, you need updated equipment. And then the one thing that I mentioned also is we know where our equipment is at all times. So if our cell phone is at the Kenwood Mall and somebody is supposed to be working from home, we'll know it.
Gotcha.
We won't know. We're not saying we're monitoring the person. We're just monitoring where our equipment goes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we've kind of thought through that, and then because we as a group said, if people are not working, this will not work. It won't be accepted by us, the community, let alone the board, and then we'll have to reshuffle the cards and see what we have to do.
Okay, good. I mean, I think that it has the potential. I've been doing a lot of research on this because, as you know, in Kenwood, as a trustee, we have a pretty thriving office market, and the office has kind of taken a dive with COVID. And so I've been researching this and watching it fairly closely to determine what companies are thinking. And I'm getting a lot of mixed signals as to some companies, they think things are still going great, but I'm not sure they have parameters in place to try to really be able to identify, is it really going great, or is it going great in the COVID mode?
Right.
And so I think that that's the only reason I asked the question, and I'm glad it was a good answer, and I'm glad you guys are going to watch it closely to see, because I have no problem with operating that way. It's just I just want to make sure we're maximizing productivity. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, the resolution passes. Now resolution 5448, authorizing award of project-based vouchers to Wallet Communities for the Glen Meadows development.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, the resolution passes. Resolution 5449, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to negotiate and enter into a contract for solicitation 2020-1010. Internet infrastructure for Horizon Hills, Beacon Glen, Seti Coon, and Mariana Terrace for a maximum 5-year contract paid for by the CARES Act.
Motion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Will we be able to?
Mr. Chair, I have one change.
Please.
I would like to add Ralph Avenue as one of our infrastructure locations to the current list.
Very well. So we're taking up the resolution modified in that way.
With Ralph Avenue.
With Ralph Avenue.
Okay.
So any questions?
Question.
Go ahead.
So I assume that we can use CARES Act money for this. Is that correct?
Oh, definitely. And the reason we can use CARES Act money is because the school systems are going remote, and so kids have tablets, but they don't have internet at home.
Gotcha.
So it's a perfect match.
Yep.
And with this, we are going to be prepaying some of their Wi-Fi service for several years, along with the infrastructure, because we're going to have to figure out how to pay for some of that on the back end. So we're hoping that we get some bids with people that know how to do this and give some pointers about how to do that on the back end to cover some of that cost when it's not paid for.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. This is terrific stuff. Tom and Laverne remember Reggie, how a few years ago we were talking about being hopeful that Cincinnati Bell provide West Insights with some coverage, and of of all the things that we could do, I don't think anybody could argue with how valuable internet access is to a household for every reason we can think of. So,
Right. So this time around, they don't have a choice but to accept it.
exactly, exactly, yeah. And if what you're saying is, that if your school isn't providing this, whatever the school, if it's a public school or a Catholic school or whatever, I consider this a priority spend of the CARES money. Good. Any other comments?
Nope.
Okay. Hearing none, then let me find my place. Roll call, Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Weidman. Aye. Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Now, Resolution 5450, authorizing the CEO of CMHA to extend the moratorium on public housing evictions through October 31st, 2020.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, Greg, could you just give us an update on the impact of COVID and on as it relates to eviction or potential non-pays versus the fact that we do have a moratorium on evictions and what it's doing financially?
So the moratorium. So let me start with this. The reason that this is the second moratorium is because it wasn't enough time because the money that came out in the CARES Act to the county and the city, they had to get those dollars out to organizations in the community, such as they're using Free Store Food Bank, they're using Talbot House, and they're using CAA. Well, last week, Free Store Food Bank said they're not taking any more applications because they couldn't process anymore. So that stalled the ability of our residents to access those funds so we can get the rent payment. So the reason that we're extending it is so they would have time to tap into those funds to receive the dollars. As far as what it will do or what it is doing to this is the beginning of our fiscal year. So we're looking at the first quarter amount of, what it would do to our rents. But I guess the flip side of it is if I have to evict all of the residents that owe us money, then I have to evict those residents. I have to pull people off the waiting list. I have to turn all of those units. And then we would be viewed as creating homelessness during the time of pandemic. So,
Greg, I think you misunderstood my question.
Okay.
My actual question was, now that we're in quarter one, what kind of impact did non-payments and the lack of evictions affect us in quarter four of last year?
It's going to be probably about 7% of what we should collect in the last quarter, and it's probably going to grow to about 10 to 12% in the first quarter.
Okay. Yeah, that's more what I was looking for. I mean, I don't have any problem with extending it. I get all that, but you said 10 to, what did you say, 10 to 13?
10 to 12.
10 to 12.
And we don't have to change how we spend money on that or other things because of that reality. It's just the budget, right?
Yep.
No, that's cash. So there's two things that happen when we go in, and some of these are recertification. So a lot of these people are recertified to zero income. That has a positive effect on our operating subsidy. So what we're after is the months prior to COVID that we're trying to collect on some of the back rent. So we're in that position, and that's why that percentage fluctuates from the end of the last year to the beginning of this year. So then if they have no income, then our operating subsidy will go up and we'll get the difference in that. But for tenant, one of the problems we have is some of the tenants, they came in late to recertify. And so that's a problem or issue because we still continue to count those dollars as dollars we're going to get in, but we're never going to get them in because they won't cooperate. So some tenants are in that bucket as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when we finally lift it, we're probably talking between 150 and 200 residents that will be in somewhere owing us anywhere from $50 all the way up to maybe a few $1,000s, and it'll be a combination of rent. Maybe they have fallen behind on a previous agreement that we've made with them, repayment agreement as well. So there'll be some tenants that'll have higher balances than others, and then some of the tenants owe us for utility cost as well. So we have all of those mixed in, and what we're trying to do is encourage them by sending applications, knocking on the door to tap into the CARES Act money to get as much as we can.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Any other questions on?
Just one more question.
Sure.
Do you anticipate, Greg, as we move forward to second quarter, that number will stabilize, or you think it's going to get bigger?
No, I think it depends on how many families that we can entice to tap into those funds. So between PRC and the CARES Act funds, let's say what we're hoping is that we can get at least between 50 and 75% of those people to tap into those funds. If we do that, then we're actually going to be on the positive side because the operating subsidy that we just turned in has them included as a zero renter.
Okay.
So our subsidy went up. And so we'll be on sort of an even side if we get 50 to 75% of them to pay that money.
I got you. Okay, good.
So I got my fingers, toes, and everything else crossed around.
Yeah, but the most important thing is that you're proactive in preserving all good options, not just for the agency, but for the tenants.
Absolutely.
And part of that is the COVID adjustments that Marquita and Lisa were talking about. Okay, so roll call on this resolution. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Resolution 5451, accepting the fact-finding recommendation regarding the negotiations between Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority and International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 20, that's the IUOE, and approving the collective bargaining agreement effective through December 31st, 2022.
Motion.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think to ask this question and we can answer it quickly. That would be great. What's a fact-finding? What does it mean to the fact-finding recommendation? What does that mean?
So Lisa, do you want to just describe what fact-finding is?
Fact-finding is a process within negotiations when both sides come to an impasse and can't reach an agreement on certain articles. So there was one article that we were at impasse with that resulted in us going to a fact finder and them subsequently issuing their recommendation.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Any other questions? Hearing none, roll call. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The resolution passes. If there's no other business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn the regular meeting?
So moved.
A second?
Mr. Chair, before the board closes the meeting, I hate to do this, and I've been thinking about it, but I'm going to ask if I could talk to the board in executive session after you close this meeting, if you would go, and I would just take 5 minutes of your time. to go over one issue that I think I need to update you. And the issue is centered around real estate.
Okay.
Real
I'll
estate.
make a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of, is this real estate acquisition?
No, real estate settlement.
Real estate settlement, okay. So I guess, Joy, that would be pending litigation?
Yes, it touches both pending litigation and real estate.
Okay.
So I would ask if the staff could stay on. We won't be more than 5 minutes. The board will not be asked to approve anything when coming out of executive session pertaining to this matter.
So I'm just going to mention this to Rob, who's running the from ESP. I trust you can get us into Rob. You can get us into an executive session that closes off the public part of this. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Do we, as board members, need to do anything? You'll let us know when and what.
So a button's got to come up. You just got to click on it. It'll take you to a separate room.
Got it. Everybody clear on what we need to do then? Okay.
Come into the executive session. You got to click on the button.
Right. Okay. So I don't know if we need a resolution number for Tom's resolution. I'm assuming.
No, it's just a motion. Just a motion.
Okay. Thank you. Well, you guys are so smart at this. Roll call to go into executive session. Ms. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman? Mr. Weedman?
You went into
Probably already clicked the button to go into the other room.
Okay. Mr. Harris?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That's a majority. We go into executive session and we'll return shortly. If each board member will click the join button on the screen.
I clicked it and then it kicked me out. Can someone text Gary and ask him? I clicked it, I was in the room, and then it kicked me out.
Okay, just 1 second. Hey, Rob, are you still there? Can you? Okay.
I'm working on it.
Okay. Mr. Harris, just give him 1 second. He's working on trying to get you back in.
Hey, Rima.
Yeah, just 1 second. I'm letting them know that Mr. Harris got kicked out.
Okay.
I think he sent the link to the wrong person.
Right. Because I received the link.
I did too, and I went in and went back out.
I'm sorry, Mr. Harris, they're aware and they're waiting for you.
Rima?
Yes, please.
So I think the link was sent to some staff members.
Yeah, I got it too.
I would just want to make sure Tyler and Stephanie knew not to join.
Well, they.
And Miss Mitchell was in there for a moment. I was in there by myself, so I just left. Oh, okay. Miss Mitchell as well?
So Rima, we just need to hang out here for a little while until, okay.
We're all, Lisa, are you in, Lisa Thomas? Can you hear me
No,
now?
it looks like she's down here.
Can you see us all? Try to go ahead and leave and come back in. All right. Bye.
And you don't want to leave because then you can't get back in until the host lets you in. That's what happened to me when the storm went through.
Well, I think that Rob can let her in.
Yeah, Robin may be a host also, so I can let people back in.
Good job, everybody.
That was a good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rima.
It's been a long day, huh?
Yeah, I don't know about everybody else, but I am hungry.
I'm starving. And look, I was so happy to get a break. Oh my God.
You mean you didn't eat in 3 minutes?
No, I had something more important to do.
And that's why that video off button's there.
Well, I had emailed Mr. Johnson like, look, I'm getting ready to go dark.
So Rob, are all 4 of them in there?
Rob? Or can you let Lisa back in? She can see us, but she can't hear us.
Got her. She's should be
Can you
back.
hear?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. She was trying to read our lips.
I wonder how I got muted out.
Lisa, you're on with your laptop or desktop and you're on with your phone. So one got let in and not the other. Your phone didn't get let in until Mark just let you in.
I was in earlier and I got booted out.
You might have clicked on did you click on the link to go to the other meeting?
No, I didn't. I closed out of it.
Maybe that booted you.
Hey, Vincent,
Yes.
you still at work?
Yes, I'm at work.
You still have a 2-hour drive home, don't you?
Yes, but I just got caught up.
No, I know you did. Why don't you go ahead and go? I'll cover for anything that they might need you for. Because you still got
Okay.
Indy.
Yes. Okay.
All right, I'll cover you. All right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes. All right.
Will, are you still at work too?
Yes.
Go ahead. I got you.
Thank you. I can stay. It's not that big a deal.
Are you sure?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still at work too. I just have a bad backdrop.
Yeah, remove that backdrop and then I'll believe you.
In your defense, I did see you at work when I left, Joe.
So you're not at work.
No, I'm at home. But I tell you what, that 35-minute, 40-minute commute was a drag because all I could think about, remember the meetings we used to attend, all you think about is what you need to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost 30 minutes of productivity driving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's because you left during the peak.
Yeah.
We're all at work. Remember, we just sold this.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Thank you, Mark.
Just spent 2 hours going over.
Thank you, Mark. You're right.
So you guys, it was pretty amazing. Even though I've heard you guys do this presentation, I don't know how many times now today and yesterday. But yeah, it was kind of amazing just to sit back today and just and relax and listen to you guys. We've done a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And until I heard you guys again, really heard you, I didn't realize how much effort and work went in and, you know, how much we got accomplished. So it's pretty significant. I would dare say that as far as housing authorities are concerned, we're on the cutting edge.
So, Rima, so with Columbus, since you brought that up, I know they got rid of all of their like public housing units. Their voucher program is slightly larger, but with us still having currently the public housing units, even though we're transforming them over to RAD, do you think they're still larger than us?
No, when they had a few years or 2 or 3 years ago, they had a little over 1,000 units left, and my understanding is that that's all gone to third-party management and all that. A lot of that. So where they're trying to grow is in their affordable. Everything that they had, they converted over to on public housing went to RAD, and I believe Wallach is the third-party manager of that. Yeah, so they're not the same size. What they're trying to do now is sell their services. their services as far as transformation on processes, just fine tuning the day-to-day activity, because they find themselves, they have named themselves like the cutting edge of housing industries in Ohio and across the nation. So they are, for a price, they'll sell you their manuals and their transformation processes.
They still have the project-based contract, don't they?
They do, and that's why they get a lot of their unrestricted funds. They're still meeting.
That's a shame. HUD has not done anything with that.
No. And unfortunately, I think we would be really good if given the chance.
Yeah, we did before, just with working, with them as a partner.
Yeah, and that would have really helped with garnering additional unrestricted funds.
They cheated all of their partners. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I think you're doing that deliberately. My phone is charging.
Oh, okay.
So I had to lay it down. But it's a shame how they treated their partners with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a dog-eat-dog-eat world, huh?
It sure is. I'll never forget that meeting when they brought us all together and told us we were all fired.
I'll never forget it. I was sitting right there too. I couldn't believe it.
I know we all have 101 examples of how remote working has improved efficiencies. It's funny, Mr. Johnson just mentioned Ralph to one of the RFPs. And while he was talking about that, I looked up the address, sent Janelle all the information while we're still in a board meeting.
I know, that's nice.
Yep.
All right. I think we're all back.
Yep.
So we're all back now.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we need to come out of executive session?
Yeah, you got to make a motion to come out of executive session.
Yep. I'm sorry. I'll make a motion to come out of executive session at 9:21.
Okay. Did I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions?
Motion to. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You better take a roll call.
Yeah. Hearing none. Roll call. Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Excuse me, Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye, and the motion passes. Now,
Motion to adjourn.
Motion
Second.
to adjourn. Second. Any questions? Hearing none. Roll call. Ms. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Mr. Harris.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion passes. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, everybody. Great job.
Take care.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.